Jay Blake and I approve. I'm Jay Blake and I approve of this recording. All right, we're going to go ahead and start. We've got a few movers and shakers here. I just want to kind of get a sense of where we need to go in our next area, next final steps. We'll review kind of some of the information that I've been able to present or put together. This is so much nicer. The last time we tried to do this, we had technical glitches and our internet wasn't working. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and hit share. There we go. All right. So our agenda for today is pretty straightforward. We're going to just do a very quick update on the project. I'm going to take a look at some additional data, new stuff I just downloaded today, some unemployment data, which actually surprised me a little bit. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the foundation of the EOA. What are the basic concepts of what we hope to accomplish? We're going to look at the goals, the preliminary goal categories, public participation, buildable lands, our targeted industries discussion, and we're going to talk a little bit about the marine economy sector. And I've already talked with Sarah, Lou, Kevin, and David about this. Melanie and Gail, you're going to get a little bit of an initiation into some of my initial thoughts on this. So, um, all right, let's go ahead. Project status update. We have completely updated the buildable lands inventory. The work that was done previously was not done on a scale or to the level of detail that I was satisfied with. We have now completed that work using our extremely talented GIS professionals up on the second floor. And I'll share a little bit of that with you in just a minute. Going to talk a little bit about the public outreach campaign that we are in the middle of, some of which we've completed, and we have some data that we'll be talking about there. And we're going to take a look at the final 2 to 3 meetings that I expect we'll be able to accomplish and complete the project. Oh, and then we're going to look at some draft document, public hearings, and adoption steps right at the end of our meeting. So, quick data drop. I love data. I'm a nerd.
Mhm.
This is stuff that just came out in July from the Employment Department talking about fishing vessels and revenue per vessel. The fishing and fisheries industry is a significant part of our community, both the heart of our community as well as the amount of economic activity. This is Oregon data. You can see that the revenue per vessel it has increased over the last 40 years, but the number of vessels themselves has dropped dramatically. And those of you who have been around long enough, you've probably seen that. So in other words, we're becoming more efficient and effective, perhaps, on a per vessel category. The next one is the estimated number of non-tribal commercial fishing employment by county in our area. And Clatsop County has the second highest number. And in talking with Sean Barrick at the state, this is one of those numbers that is really elusive to get exact numbers on. But in looking at general trends, the number of employees has been decreasing over this time based on, again, the fact that the number of vessels going out has been decreasing. But Clatsop County and Lincoln County still have significant job production in this area. This is farming. I thought this was also kind of an interesting thing. If you look at this is by county. Did we have a question?
Yeah, Jay, it's Kevin. Just
Yep.
to mention
Go ahead. Yep.
the Sean Barrick information, like you said, it really underreports because you have so many like single proprietors that
Yep.
run their fishing vessels, etc. And the count, of course, it's really now the larger vessels, right, versus the smaller ones. So it's kind of squeezing out the small guy. But just wanted to mention that.
Yep. That makes sense, Kevin. And that's directly in line with what Sean Barrick has shared with me, how difficult it is to actually grab that total number and total impact. So,
Exactly. And like
yep.
some products is the same way, but you'll get there, I know.
Yep, we will. All right, farming. Um, the number of farming operations has dropped in Clatsop County over the last 5 years. The number of hired people working in farm industry has also dropped. However, the amount of acreage that is dedicated to agricultural use has actually increased in Clatsop County. That doesn't actually show on this graphic. The only one of our Northwest Oregon counties that showed increase in the number of farms and the increase in the number of farm labor was Benton County. And that's because of obviously it's slightly different than Clatsop, Columbia, Lincoln, and Tillamook in its position in our area. It's closer, obviously, to the valley. But I do think it's interesting that we have more farm acreage and fewer people working it. Again, that gets to the efficiency issues that we see in so many of our resource-based industries. The same is true we talked about last time in forestry. The number of people working in forestry has gone down, but the efficiency has actually increased. And that's mechanization, that's procedures that have changed. The story I heard from one of the logging companies is what used to take 12 people now takes two, and we're just as good at it because of mechanization and other items like that.
Jay, does this include dairy farms?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so like the big ones, and then of course the jerk roans. I got you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So what it does also is it indicates that the farm operations are getting larger. And that is a statistic that is echoed throughout the United States. That was huge, huge issue in the 80s and 90s in the Midwest where I was from. The number of actual farmers dropped dramatically, but the acreage remained the same or actually increased. And that had a significant impact on a lot of small towns in the Midwest. All right. This is one I want to focus a little bit of time on, and this is the concept of a living wage job. Don't bother reading all of that stuff about Massachusetts Institute of Technology, other than to say that MIT did a study of living wages, what it takes to have a living wage in every county in every state around the United States. And they broke it down into the characteristics of the family. If you had one adult working, two adults working, and the number of kids that you had up to three. Now, obviously, this number would change the more kids you have in a particular moment in time. This is from actually 2022 and 2023. The number of adults working, if you had one adult working and they had one child, a single parent with a single child, a living wage job in Clatsop County would have required you to earn 37.84 an hour on a standard 2,080 hours a year work year. And I presented this information to the county board, and there was a little bit of a, I don't want to say audible gasp, but a little bit of, what? Because they didn't realize how high it is. Now, if you take a look at this is Clatsop County. Sarah Lou, go ahead, interrupt.
Well, I was just gonna, make them gasp more. When I looked at this, Jay and I had talked about this, so I really wanted to see it. This states that you can get an $800 studio in our county. That has not existed since 2020.
Yeah.
Wanted to throw that out there.
Well, it's true. It's absolutely true. And the numbers are a point in time number. And but I think the key here is it's higher than you would think, perhaps. The term living wage jobs. That's a term that is thrown around by politicians and planners. We need more living wage jobs, more living wage jobs. Um, if you take this number and you look at two adults working, two children, both adults need to be making 26.79 an hour. That's not necessarily an easy thing to do in Clatsop County to get both people earning that amount. I did spend just a little bit of extra time and I pulled up the numbers for Multnomah County because everyone recognizes how expensive it would be to live in Multnomah County. And the first number for us is 37.84. One person, one child in Portland needs to be making 48.23 an hour.
Mhm.
So $11 an hour more to live in Portland. And then for I went back to where I came from in Minnesota, dinky little county, Kanabec County, population about 12,000. One adult and one child needs to make $34 an hour. And that's really a function in my mind of the cost of housing. I would also argue that in even within Clatsop County, that number can vary.
Hey, Jay,
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
the thing, I know we'll get there, but to mention is I've been in some meetings this past week on the daycare front, and you look at daycare for two children runs about $3,000 to $3,200 per month.
Yeah.
So the an A about obviously having that even available, but from the standpoint of the family having coming up with that money.
Yep, that is one of the between housing and daycare costs. Those are some of the highest portions of this. If you get really deep into the data, that is one of the highest costs for working families. So, um, but what I think is interesting about this too is um, it surprises people what that number really needs to be. Okay, if I get a job and I'm making for a while back, it was a living wage or it should be $15 an hour. Well, we're not anywhere near $15 an hour here. And I don't hear this is I'm going to editorialize. I'll raise my hand and say this is an editorial. You don't hear people talking about, I think everyone should have a $38 an hour job. That's just that's not politically tenable right now, but it is kind of an interesting piece of information. I did have someone question whether or not we should even be focusing on living wage jobs. Why is that such an issue? Why do we want that? Why don't we just, go for all jobs? Well, the lower wage jobs tend to just happen. You need to work to create these higher end jobs. And so the work we do to create jobs should be working to create these higher wage jobs. The jobs that are at minimum wage or the lower wage jobs, those are going to happen naturally. But this is what we need to really hopefully be working on. Any thoughts and comments on that? I know Kevin and Sarah, you had some, but thank you. Anybody else?
I think
Okay.
this is Melanie.
Yeah,
I would
Melanie.
say, I mean, when people are having to work two jobs, it lowers their quality of life,
Yeah.
right? Because all of a sudden now you are putting the, responsibilities of childcare and other things on either other people or family members.
Yep.
And so I appreciate that you included this in the conversation because I do think that's important.
Yeah, and I think the double wage, or I mean the people working two jobs is something that's also really difficult to track. But quality of life matters there, absolutely. I grew up in a family where my dad was working for Northwest Airlines. They were always on strike. My dad ended up working three part-time jobs to make ends meet. So it was always a challenge. So go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I just wanted to add in the question of why support higher wage jobs. When we have to subsidize housing to protect people's health, life, and safety, that means those dollars are necessarily not going to infrastructure that serves the businesses that they may or may not work at. So, you
Yeah,
know,
that's exactly the point, is that
Hmm.
you've got living wage jobs. People have to live. And
Hmm.
if it's not coming from their wages, it's got to be subsidized somewhere, right? So it's out of savings, it's out of subsidies in housing or food or both. Or yeah, you're exactly right, Sarah Lou. That's the point when you talk from economic, just from a clinical standpoint, is that
Hmm.
people have to live. Therefore, that wage is a requirement from some source.
Yep. Good point. Good point. The next one I also have shared with the county board, but I want to focus a little bit about on it here is the state has predicted over the next 10 years the jobs that are going to be growing the most in our region. And this is Benton, Clatsop, Columbia, Lincoln, and Tillamook counties. So the coast and Benton. And they're predicting that for all occupations, we'll have about a 9% job growth over this time period to 2023 to 2033. And so what I did is I worked with Sean Barrick and I said, so let's look at the average wages for these different job areas that are going to grow. And the ones that are with the light blue and the far column here are the ones that are going to grow the fastest or above average growth. And then you take a look at the hourly wages, and the fastest growing jobs are not necessarily the highest paying jobs. Now, that's not to take anything away from a 17% increase in computer and math jobs or community and social service occupations, but the two highest growth areas are healthcare support occupations and personal care and service occupations. And those are, on average, not at living wage levels. Okay. The, um, the next group, food preparation. People working. Go ahead, Kevin.
And Debbie Newton, she's on the call, right? I'm looking
Yeah.
at her.
Yeah.
What's personal
Yes.
care and occupations? What exactly is that?
Personal care?
Just looking at that second line down, personal care and service occupations. Give some examples of what that is from a sector standpoint, or like
It would be like in-home care, elderly care, in-home care,
oh, okay.
stuff like
Personal
that.
care, taking care of elderly and
Yes, but
okay.
in-home to where it's, yeah. Sorry, my microphone's really bad.
Well,
I'll ask Kevin's question, but similarly, on these computer and mathematical occupations, it does look like this is pulled from a region bigger than the region I work in, but
mhm.
we know what those jobs are and who's hiring, and if they're actually in Clatsop County or if they're, I'm
Counties, to your
assuming,
point,
That's
probably.
Sarah, you raise a good point. Some of that includes Benton County, which includes Corvallis.
yeah.
And the Corvallis market and job market is different than the Napa job market or the Cannon Beach job market. So yeah, it is a larger region, and we do not know, they don't get down to that level of detail saying a third of these jobs are going to be in Clatsop County, or they don't get to that level in this type of higher level prediction. So we may or may not, depending upon the emphasis we move to in this process, we may or may not be focusing on those high tech jobs. Now, I'm going to suggest that we might want to do that, primarily because, again, it is above the median living wage in our area, and so those would be the types of jobs we might want to search out.
Well, they could
Uh,
be
Go ahead.
remote, and I think remote is great. And I just want to
Mhm.
clarify. I Googled personal care and service occupations because I've been buried in NAICS codes for a couple months.
Right.
Barbers, hairstylist, mani-pedi,
Yes.
and
See,
that
that's
is something that cannot be mechanized and does have decent, I mean,
Right.
so anyway, just
Because
wanted,
most of hairdressers and barbers and stuff are self-employed, or they don't get paid by an employer. They're usually 1099s.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
well,
Yep.
it's interesting. Just again looking at this, breakdown. I think Jay, that there may be an opportunity to work with Sean, and I know Shauna before Sykes. Before that, we did do some pullouts on some presentations for Clatsop County. Maybe
Mhm.
not to this degree of level, but I think he can be really helpful in drilling down some of the sectors from a Clatsop County perspective.
Yep. I have a hotline, a certain button I press, and Sean shows up on the phone. It's like the bat phone for me. So I will continue to work with Sean to see if I can narrow some of that information. Um, some of the slower growing jobs, farming, fishing, and forestry occupations. And that again is a difficult one to track, but the state is not predicting significant job growth in this area. And I think the HCP is, I don't want to say to blame, but it is part of the explanation perhaps for why some of that may not be expanding. Mechanization in farming and fishing and forestry operations also plays an important role in why we aren't anticipating the significant job growth in that area. So, any other comments on this one?
I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but I'm gonna provide my opinion on some things that we should maybe focus on.
Go for it.
Uh, construction trades.
Yep.
Um, and what they're calling business and financial operations, we call professional services. And I think that those are foundational requirements for a broader, diversified economy.
Yep, I completely agree. And slide number 36 will probably support exactly what you're saying, Sarah.
I'll say
So
less so we can get there. Thank you.
no, 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 no. It's perfect timing. Perfect timing. So thank you. All right. So why focus on living wage jobs? We already talked a little bit about that. Oh, one thing that I actually just downloaded today. And I mentioned it yesterday when I presented to the Seaside Chamber group. The people who are going to be moving to our area will tend to be older. They will have a more disposable income, but they may also choose to not be part of the workforce because they're retired. And so the population demographics are going to start to impact our ability to fill jobs in our area. Those people are still going to want their haircut and they're still going to want to go to the store. And so I think there's some concerns about that. And one of the things that I threw in here as well is what percentage of our workforce is over 55? And Clatsop and Tillamook County are 27 and 28% of the workforce is above the age of 55. Um, that's above average. Now, statistically, how significant is that? I don't know. But if you walk around, there's a lot of gray hair in this county, and so I think that that's something that we need to also consider. Debbie, did you have something you wanted to add there?
I just put in a presentation that Sean did for job vacancies in the Northwest Oregon
Yep.
for your guys' information.
Okay, great.
It's
Great.
for 2023.
Great.
I
Awesome.
also want to ask a question on this. It's like this is a percentage in the workforce.
Yep.
I know historically we've said that in terms of just residents, that the oldest demographic percent to total is Lincoln County, and Clatsop's number two.
Hmm.
So on the workforce side here, Jay, which obviously is a little bit different. My point is there's a lot of retirees who have second homes, Gearhart, Cannon Beach, etc. That skews our numbers just from a. And again, how do you, when you're just defining in the workforce, 55 plus versus residents retired, is that just again data from the employment department or?
Yep, it is.
Okay, got
It's from the employment department. So, and again, does it capture every single employee? No, it does not. It doesn't capture every single person who is earning an income. What it does mean is that transfer payments to our county are significantly higher than some other counties too
it.
because of that age. Yeah.
Yep.
So, all right. Oregon Lane Force. All right. This one essentially from 1993 to 2023. In the labor force, 7% of the labor force is over 65. That's the state. So the age of the people who are actually working is increasing. Yep. This last one I threw in here, it was from the same report, was those working from home. And Oregon, this is from 2022, so it's a couple years old. Oregon ranked number 6 in the nation in terms of the number of people working from home. And you're going to see another piece of information from the local survey that kind of supports that. I think that has some legs, some potential for us as well. I'm going to actually skip over this and come back to it because I want to talk about the public questionnaire. We had a public questionnaire. I don't use the term survey, but we had a questionnaire that was put out, and we had 184 responses in about a month. And I was pleased, and I think it gave us a little bit of additional data that we can consider as we move the project forward here. So most of the people who answered the survey, and everything is those who answered the survey, have lived here for extended periods of time. And so about 60% have lived here longer than 10 years. This one is which of the following statements applies to you? I'm a student, 1%. I don't work, is 5%. I've retired to the county, 26%. I own a business. I work part-time and I work full-time. You can see it was a good, pretty good cross-section of the backgrounds of people. This is the one I wanted to focus a little bit on here. Do you work from home? Uh, the not doesn't apply is probably those who don't work. I get that. But 27% of the people who answered the survey said, yeah, I work from home. That's higher than I expected. So, and again, is it a statistical survey? No, but it's just a point in time piece of data.
And
What are
also
the,
people respond to surveys, right?
yeah, that's true. I am online. I'm working.
Yeah.
I can take
Well,
time from work and do this. What are the top three reasons to live in Clatsop County? Natural beauty, the oceans, safe place to live. Then comes recreational opportunities and family living in the area. So there, there's a draw here. And it's not necessarily employment opportunities, and it's certainly not the low cost of housing. Next one. This is the one that I think was the aha moment for me. What do you see as are the challenges to the future economic health of the county? Number one and number two, housing costs and housing availability. Ta-da! Far and away the biggest concerns of the people who answered the survey or questionnaire. The second level is education and training concerns, environmental impacts, lack of developable land, lack of rail service, and then the other ones tail off from there. But the key takeaway here is housing costs and housing availability. All right. This one was what types of businesses should we be going after? Number one, healthcare. Number two, construction and trades. Number three, tech-based businesses. Those were the one, two, and three. Then behind that are transportation, recreation, tourism, light industry, manufacturing, arts and entertainment. And the lowest ones were other and lodging facilities. So again, of those who's actually answered the questionnaire, lodging facilities was like, we got plenty. I'm putting words in their mouth a little bit. So, all right. I think my favorite part about the whole thing were the written comments. And there's like 6 or 7 pages. I sent those along in the packet. Daycare was mentioned a number of times. Infrastructure, tech nomad workers, the work from home people. This is great. More tourism needed, less tourism needed. More industry needed, less industry needed. Great place to live, too many people moving here. I mean, it was it was all over the place. And I think my absolute favorite one was it's a great place to hide. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it's a great place to hide. So I don't think that will be the new chamber motto, David. So anyway, but again, it is a point in time. It is an opportunity for us to share concerns. The one thing that was mentioned a number of times that I want to lift up again is daycare. And the county has been actively involved in some of the daycare work that the state has been doing. And I know that we've already authorized daycare to go in just about every zoning district in the county, but we're actually losing daycare right now. And it's going to get more and more difficult unless we can find ways to make that trend change. So, any comments about the public input section here?
just like you said, Jed, but being on the Clatsop County task force for the last 3 or 4 years, the daycare, we're painfully aware of Peace First closing down in downtown Astoria.
Yeah.
It was going in the wrong direction. And I know, Melanie, there's some great opportunities from a funding perspective for infrastructure. So we're going to get back together again shortly. We need to get this thing wrapped up again. Our committee has been, we've had some turnover with the lead person who spearheads it, but now we have that job filled, and there's grant money available, obviously, from the county and others. We just need to work to build infrastructure and get more centers open throughout the entire county.
I think Monica wants to comment on something I was going to say too, but I'm going to let Monica say it.
I think that that's awesome that there's grant opportunities for infrastructure, but infrastructure for daycare is no different than infrastructure for housing. It's all the environmental land use constraints that we face to try and build daycare.
I was going to add though we did get a request for a daycare wanting to build a new facility somewhere, and they were looking at the potential for some county access land. So we're trying to make some connections there to hopefully create an opportunity for someone to provide those services. But that is part of the infrastructure that I have not mentioned, and it does need to be mentioned because you can't have working families unless you've got that daycare option.
Well,
So,
and also, Monica, to your point, and Jay, it's like sitting down with the Peace First folks, Scott Spence and myself, Melanie, others. And then at the end of the day, it was like you're all aware that they sold the building that they're currently in, the parent parish, if you will, the East Astoria campus, if you will. And so then we're looking for another home for them, kind of back to your point about zoning, et cetera.
mhm.
And looking throughout Astoria, for example, in Warrington, some churches that are for sale and things. And there's these constraints, but I think the thought process was that there's still opportunity there to relocate. Not this center. They sadly they're going to be closing, but I'm hoping that we can kind of resurrect that and find a home for them in a vacant building or and it's helpful to hear you say, Jay, about the county looking to partner with like some of the land or et cetera.
Kevin, I just want to give you a shout out for the use of resurrection and the use of churches in the daycares. I thought that was well played. Nice job.
Hallelujah.
All right. Here's where I'm looking to hopefully get a little bit of consensus, and I want to open this up for your discussion and get your thoughts on the general goals and foundational statements today. That's kind of the meat of what I'm hoping to get out of this meeting. Um, the building blocks, the foundation, kind of the basis. This is what the assumptions are that we're using to build the goals and action statements. I've heard quite often the housing crisis is stifling economic growth. I've heard that from numerous businesses. I have seen that from the local government perspective, where people are hired and can't find housing, so they end up moving on. It's really at a critical point. And so, if we say, yeah, we need to build more housing, how do we do that? We need construction workers, we need contractors, we need land. Well, where do all those construction workers live other than in the van along 101 on the pullouts? I mean, it's a cyclical thing where if you don't have housing for the people who build the housing, it's gonna be difficult to build the housing.
Hey,
So,
Jay.
yep, go ahead, Kevin.
That meeting you and Alyssa and I had last week was very helpful, eye-opening, if you will, in the housing front with her leadership, and I know all the cities in the county as part of this housing group. But I would say that I just find it very interesting because I work really closely with Mayor Steve Wright in Seaside. He's on our Cedar board, et cetera. And to have him to stay in meetings, public and private. I think the Colpack meeting he talked about this last week, actually, in Astoria. There's like 300 housing units in the city of Seaside that are forthcoming, not like on paper, but definitely. And he was proud to state that, including obviously low income, subsidized all the way up to market rate and partnership with the county. So like you said, the thing about accentuating our positive,
Yep.
people work really hard at this,
Yep.
but not enough, but it's good steps forward in many cases.
Well, and the other one, and as a former Warrenton person, the Warrenton Housing Project, which will have up to 450 units on it, is ready to go. They're doing wetland delineations, they're doing design work. The issue for them is going to be infrastructure because they don't have sewer capacity for all 450 units. So there's some things that are happening, but there's some missing pieces still. Sarah Lou, go ahead.
Is Fort Point in a floodplain?
No,
That's great news.
it
Okay.
is great news. It's an amazing news, and you're going to see another slide. I think it's slide 32. Sarah Lou, you're preempting me, but that's okay.
So the
Um,
next, we are going to talk about FEMA BiOp. Yes.
yes, we are. It is on my list. I added it since I sent the packet out. So, our economy is shifting. We're getting older. Here's something else that I think is really important for us to understand. The employment lands, the lands that are zoned for economic development in the county, the unincorporated areas, are pretty fixed. The state planning laws are not going to encourage or allow significant increases in the amount of development lands outside of municipalities. And even within the municipalities, it's a heavy lift to try and get additional uh, land zoned for commercial and industrial development outside of your current municipal boundaries. Um, and if we want to talk about FEMA at this point, a significant portion of Warrenton's industrial lands are in the floodplain. And so it's going to have an even bigger impact on that than uh, we might have initially thought. One of the other things that I've heard several times is job training programs. And Kevin, you and I talked about this a little bit with Alyssa, and I talked yesterday with Northwest Oregon Works, is we need to be training for the jobs that are coming, not the ones that we've always had, but we need to start to refocus our educational efforts. We need to create the pipeline from the high school CTE programs to the community college up to OSU, which are all located here, and then create those jobs of the future. And so I was just curious to get your perspective on that as well.
Well, I just wanted to say, you're all aware that we have a new president that's been named, Jared Hogue, Classic Community College, starting shortly. And I think that he's going to be great for the community and for the college. And his background is in the CTE world and also workforce training.
Mm-hmm.
And in his interviews, public and private, he talked about examples when he was at Mount Hood Community College of how he worked with an underserved area like East County.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to work with the employers to establish things for like coding programs and certain programs that really were very vibrant. So I know many of us very excited about him joining the team, and all we have a huge challenge in front of us. But I think the college, I don't think I know, the college must play a key role in this conversation.
Yep. Agreed. Sarah Lou, go ahead.
I think I missed the bullet that says the economy is shifting. I would really appreciate it if you added some nuance to that that includes due to state enforced regulations.
Mm-hmm.
The
All right. Yep.
economy is really a sustainable forest industry that's on a 40-year cycle. Their lack of investment in ports is causing consolidation within the seafood processing industry. Those are not those aren't happening because a natural cycle of business, and both of those businesses are sustainable.
Yep. Good point. And I've made that note. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Well said. So,
Yeah. There are forces, external forces that are causing some of the change. Absolutely. Um, the PSU numbers are indicating for the next 20 years the county population will continue to grow. It will also continue to age, just like the state of Oregon, perhaps even at a higher rate with an aged population, which again causes a little bit of a shift in what we need to be focusing on.
can I
Um,
question,
but
Jay?
go ahead, Kevin.
So, Monica, I know that Gearhart, for example, when we were working with Regional Solutions, I was a guest with the Regional Solutions months ago in Gearhart, and they were fighting those PSU numbers significantly. Do you have any updates from Jay or Gail in terms of pushbacks on the PSU numbers that impact us, or just kind of steady she goes?
I guess I can respond a little bit from the unincorporated areas from the county perspective. The county, we did not in the community development department see the numbers being significantly underrepresented in unincorporated areas. I did several meetings with the housing task force and talked with the municipalities about the history of underreporting or undercounting in Gearhart and in Warrenton. But I don't know at this point if anybody made a formal um, response or challenge. Monica, are you aware of any, or Gail?
I am not aware of any. I know that Gearhart specifically really disputed some of the numbers following the 2020 census as well, because a lot of it is around, those were previously second homes. And then during COVID, people came here and then ended up, because of the work from home opportunity, stayed here. And so PSU obviously isn't going out based on doing door-to-door knocking as aggressively as you do during the census. And so if they're using their modeling and not taking into consideration, then that's going to have significant impacts on what their numbers are.
Yep.
And they also saw, the estimates for Astoria were way off. And I think that's because more people are living in existing homes, roommates, families, basements, etc. But there's kind of a perverse cycle happening at the state level by relying on this forecast as if it is happened and real.
Sarah, it's a great point. I'm kind of surprised how much weight is given to it, but it seems like every grant is, what does PSU say your population is going to be? Um, I we have, as a county, outperformed the PSU numbers for 20 years. And we talked about that with PSU, but PSU said, here's what our model says. And there wasn't a lot of, I went to several of those meetings, and there wasn't uh, much movement in the sense of recognizing the difference between a rural recreational county and a rural county. Um, uh, it's the population trends in Malheur County are different than they are here. So, but there was very limited agreement to modify. So
Yeah,
it was basically up to each city to take that on. So
yeah. Okay.
yeah. And the last thing I want to do in this is I really want to focus on our assets. So many of historical plans have been Debbie Downers, and I'm not just pulling out Clatsop County, but oh, woe is us. And I don't think that moves us forward, other than to make us feel bad about our current situation. We should be focusing on where we have opportunities here. So those are the basic foundational statements, and I've taken some notes on these comments. If you've got anything else you want added or clarified, please shoot me an email.
Yeah, and I
And
would say I'll shoot you an email. But I think about this job training program. It's kind of back to the college about
yeah.
certification programs, certificate programs.
Hmm.
Obviously, of course, have our academic side, very,
Yep.
very critical. But I think again, like Sarah Lou said about on the economy is shifting. Same thing with job training. Oh, well, what does that mean? Is that just Northwest Oregon Works? And I think we need to be more definitive there. And I'll shoot you an email on that.
Perfect. I appreciate that. I definitely do. All right. The general goals are the four kind of principal areas I want to focus on. And I sent out a bunch of information, but I really want to kind of get general consensus on these four major topics. And if you've got some wordsmithing and some suggestions on some of the other stuff I sent out, please share that with me. I'd like to incorporate your ideas into that area as well. The first one is our economic aspirations. This is where we want to be economically. This is where we want our economy to be. The second one is housing. So many of the economic aspirations require us to have adequate housing at the right levels in the right location, and I think that needs to be called out. The mayor of Seaside, Mr. Wright, talked yesterday at the Seaside Chamber meeting, is that our housing needs are interconnected. Housing in Astoria and Warrenton helps and impacts jobs elsewhere in the county and vice versa. If there's housing built in Seaside, that creates an opportunity for people who may work in Warrenton and or Astoria. We are on this corridor, and our housing is connected. And so I think that that's part of the work that Alyssa is leading as well.
Well, and Jay, I've said for many years in my presentations to county commission and all the city councils, et cetera, about, and I have the data that shows, we have the data that shows, where you live and where you work are two different things. Like I think
Yep.
like 65% of people that live in Seaside don't work there, for example.
Yep.
Similar to Astoria. So you're spot on.
Yeah. And go ahead, Sarah.
I want to be the contrarian on that statement.
Okay.
It is true. But I want to say what the outcome of that is year-round congestion on roads and bridges that will not be improved, widened, made bigger, or anything else. So we need to be looking at the walkability of the towns. So when people aren't driving to work, they're walking to their entertainment, and how we can support public transit in the form of large buses all the way down to micro transit. Um, that's just my 2 cents whenever I'm sitting on the Bay Bridge wishing there were roundabouts.
Sarah Lou, I appreciate that. And we just submitted a TGM grant. I think I mentioned this to you to update the county's transportation system plan. And I sat down with the transit people at Sunset Empire, and that's a critical part of this too, is we need to be able to move people efficiently and effectively throughout the county. And that's not just employees, but that's even the tourist industries who may want to move people around the county. We have to focus in on that. So congestion is another aspect. Absolutely true.
People and goods.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that the TGM grant talked multiple times about the efficient movement of people and goods. So yeah. The third one is a healthy community, and that's where I get to lifting up the fact that we have um, two health systems serving our community. A county this size is lucky to have two health systems available to it. Each one has its strengths and weaknesses. Some of them are growing. The other parts of this are all of the services that are necessary to create a healthy community. Now, there is a whole separate group of people who are studying a blue zone, and that process is moving on a separate plane. But the idea of creating a healthy area and having health services, whether it's traditional or new health services, I think is an opportunity for us as well. The last one is a resilient economy, and that really gets to the cyclical nature of our job systems. Our tourist industry is cyclical, our fishing industry is cyclical, our forest industry is cyclical, and it's trying to make it so that we are not as dependent on any particular cycle. When one of our cycles goes down, we do not want to have the entire economy go down. And so that is really focusing on the up and down chart I showed you with the Clatsop County, is to try to flatten that a little bit, continue it to grow. And so the resiliency, and that also gets to the warming oceans and the change in sea level and so forth that seems to be occurring. All of that is part of that. So. Any other thoughts on these areas? I'm going to continue on then.
I was
But
debating, I wanted to add 2 cents, and I do, around resilient economy. I think that the county and the region needs to be looking at power supply,
yeah, all
um,
right.
regardless of how it's generated. As far as I know, uh, every forecast of supply and demand cross here in the next 10 years, where we're not going to have the demand. I'm sorry, we're not going to have the supply that's needed to do the business that we want to.
Okay. All right. So
You know,
noted.
Sarah Lou, that came up, Melanie, and others brought that up. And Lisa Dunlap gave an update at a Cedar board meeting 2 meetings ago about the capacity and how they feel that they can address that. If there's some like data center coming in, that's a whole different conversation. But they felt, other than availability of some of the infrastructure that they get in terms of what they have to purchase, they felt that we're in pretty good stead. But I don't know if this, I wanted to just mention that.
And who is saying that?
Elisa Dunlap,
Okay.
Pacific Power, yeah.
All right, great. Just very quickly, I'll spend just a few minutes talking about the buildable lands inventory. I mentioned to you that we redid it, and I'm much more confident in the accuracy of it. Essentially, if you look at vacant lands, which are lands that are outside of the municipalities, zoned for employment and vacant, then you take out all the geohazards, slide areas, floodplains, wetlands, irregularly shaped parcels, parcels without access, parcels less than a half an acre, and you get about 60 acres of employment land throughout all of Clatsop County. And a vast majority of them are scattered small sites. There is an exception here. There are some light industrial zone tracts out in Napa, and they are served by a municipal, or excuse me, a community water system, but not a community sewer system. So certain types of light industrial uses could very easily go into these areas. But the rest of the commercial sites are scattered old tourist commercial sites along 26 and 30 that don't have any sewer or water available other than what can be managed on site. So this is just one example of the maps
And
that
Jay,
we've. Yep, go
been
ahead.
aware of this, but just FYI, on the enterprise zone,
Yeah,
there is areas of Napa within the enterprise zone.
and it mirrors some of this, so that's good. A good thing. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Um, the next one was what is called redevelopable lands. This is a much more challenging one to come at because you are looking at lands that have some development on it, and then you try to predict whether or not it could be a redevelopment site. And you do that based on what is the value of the land versus the value of the improvement. So in other words, if there's just a crappy old pole barn on there, but the land is worth $1 billion, that has some redevelopment potential. And so there's some criteria that the state has used elsewhere, and I just essentially copied that, brought that to us. And there's a total of 11 acres of redevelopment land available in the county if you do that process of taking all the land that's developed. And some of them, for instance, this particular site out here on Highway 26 is an old tourist commercial site. And there's 3 acres of land. It has a dilapidated building on it, so it has some improvement, but it has some potential. It's 3 acres. It doesn't have municipal water. It doesn't have municipal sewer, so it would have to be a well and on-site. So, but there is some potential there. And there's another one out on 26 by LC that has some development on it. This is out by Camp 22. No, Camp 18. Thank you. So the amount of redevelopment land in the unincorporated areas is minimal. And so the other issue that we talk about when we look at this is in what areas do we have the types of services necessary to have employment-based growth happening? So we look at areas that have community sewer and water systems. And again, there's very limited land in those areas that isn't already developed. So essentially where I think this points is we need to be focusing employment investment in areas where there are services, whether it's effective transportation service, effective municipal, or excuse me, community sewer and community water service, those types of uses. The example that I'm most familiar with is the issue of mini storages. Again, Warrenton went through a fairly significant review of this. Mini storages are great if you want to store stuff, but they create zero jobs. And in terms of value added to the tax base, the construction of these facilities generally is of a medium to lower grade. The cheaper you can put it up, the more money you're going to make, and you can make money hand over fist with a lot of them. At least one or two of those sites in Napa, we have had uh, people kicking the tires to put out more mini storage out there, uh, creating great places for people to store stuff, but they aren't necessarily adding to the economic welfare of the entire community, Napa and Clatsop County as a whole. Opinion, opinion. All right. So there's really going to be a focus on trying to encourage development, effective development of sites within municipalities. I personally believe, and Gail, maybe you can agree or disagree with me, it is unlikely that the state is going to support any significant rezoning of resource lands to employment lands. That's just not the direction the state planning rules are set up. And so for us to expect to create a new city somewhere or to enhance a rural community by adding a 100-acre industrial park, the chances of that are fairly slim in terms of the state planning rules and regulations. And Sarah Lou or Gail or anybody, if you've got a different opinion, please let me know.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say though, there are opportunities to do land swaps. So
Okay. Yep.
where the land isn't developable, but maybe you have a different site. And I'm thinking about some of these smaller parcels that you identified. Maybe it would make sense um, to look at different areas and swap those out
Yeah.
elsewhere that are
I think
closer to services.
I think consolidation might be an option there. Yeah, because there's a whole bunch of half-acre, quarter-acre sites that were old tourist stops along the roads to Seaside and to Astoria, and the consolidation of that might be an option. Yeah, good point. I'll note that. All right. Um, I will be the Debbie Downer here and talk a little bit about the FEMA, what's called the FEMA buyout. Most of you are probably aware of this. FEMA has been put in a position where they are forcing counties in Oregon and other parts of the country to significantly change or potentially significantly change the way we address development within the floodplains. And this is a result of a lawsuit quite a number of years ago. The county has been given three options that we have to choose sometime between now and December 1st. And the end result needs to be a no net loss of flood storage and vegetation and habitat. And the state has given us, excuse me, FEMA has given us some options. And we have just received two of those options in the last 2 days, and we're still kind of addressing what that may look like. Last night at the county board, there was some strong opinions related to how are we going to react to this particular situation. But this FEMA buyout has a significant impact on much of the development lands in our county. If you're looking at unincorporated areas, the commercial industrial lands that we look at often are in miles crossing that area south of Astoria, floodplain. So the ability to develop, expand, redevelop in that area is going to get certainly more challenging. The city of Warrenton, a significant portion of their industrial land base is uh, either in the floodplain or behind dikes that have yet to be certified. So it will have the potential to have some fairly significant impacts on cities like Warrenton and Astoria as well. Um, there's no resolution to this at this time. We're still in the learning mode. And Gail, I want to give you an opportunity if there's anything you want to add to this. This impacts not only commercial industrial land, but also housing. So it's pretty far reaching.
Yeah, it's very far reaching. There is no good option. And if you read the requirements of either the Habitat Assessment Guide or the model ordinance, it's going to be very difficult to implement. It's going to be expensive, not only for local governments, but for the people who own the property. And if you read it very closely, I think it's designed to really just make development so onerous that people stop building in the floodplain. But FEMA has an out that basically says, well, A, we don't pass the rules. The local jurisdiction passed these rules. And look, you do have options, so you can't really claim a takings, but it's going to cost you $58 million to develop your property, to build a 200 square foot garden shed. So anyway, that's me on my soapbox. It's also important to keep in mind that there are other changes that are out out in the world right now that are also impacting or will impact. The biggest one, well, two of them being the changes that HUD has adopted related to FHA-backed mortgages, is that you will now have to have a home that's elevated to an even higher standard than what our current codes require. And then there's also the proposed changes to the flood maps themselves, which is going to increase the entire area that is going to be included in the floodplain. So when you combine all three of those together, a bigger floodplain area, higher requirements for FHA-backed mortgages, and even more stringent requirements because of the buyout, it's going to have a very significant impact, I think. So, all right, I'm done. Thank you.
Well, I was wondering, everybody. I mean, I've asked the question: where are our elected officials, like our federal? Where's Wyden and Merkley and Bonamici? And I was told kind of privately that they're kind of radio silence time. But I think obviously David and everybody, we need to really be pushing this aggressively. And I know that's an understatement, but I'm just wondering where's our leadership at the state and federal level here?
Kevin, I've taken over Colpack's response to the FEMA BIOP, and I've been working closely with Paul in Columbia County and Sarah Absher in Tillamook County. We've reached out to the federal delegation, and their field staff said they were willing to meet. I've proposed dates and have not heard back from them. That being said, they're going to have differing opinions, and we are working with the governor's staff to see if we can get a statewide response as well.
Oh, great.
That is swirling and non-committal right now, but we are at least having those conversations.
Okay, good.
Does anybody know on the question of takings? I realize that this is designed to sort of thwart that legal argument, but if there were such a lawsuit, who gets sued? Is it the county that gets sued for having put these rules in place, or is it FEMA? This is the federal government that gets sued if somebody claims a taking on this.
That
I'm
is
gonna go ahead, Gail.
it's a very interesting question. I know that FEMA, the formal FEMA line is FEMA does not implement land use regulations. That is done at the local level. I would suspect it's probably going to be the local jurisdiction because we're easier to take on than trying to sue FEMA and their massive attorneys. But I guess it's going to remain to be proven how this is going to play out.
I would say at the Colpack meeting last week, Sarah Lou can talk to this, but Tony Hyde said just what Gail said. They're going to come after. He said to all the elected officials in the room and the Zoom screen, they're going to come after you. Get ready. This is so onerous. They're going to come after you, municipalities and county.
And yes, I presume that individuals with mortgages will sue the counties. There's a group working. I just put the link in the chat. And I am anxiously anticipating the lawsuits that should be filed for this Oregonians for floodplain protection. So it'll be cascading lawsuits, to answer your question, Dave.
And yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that because it's emerging. We don't even know all of the issues that we have in front of us on it. We can speculate, but until we get further down this path, I mean, we've only had the draft ordinance for less than a day. So it's very early in the process for us to completely understand what that impact is going to be. I think, however, we can agree that it will be interesting, it will be significant, and it will be challenged on multiple levels. So and Gail and I have talked a little bit about this too. We're supposed to have a decision, and at one point in time, they said you could just have to decide by December 1st. And then there was a point where they were saying, no, you have to have something adopted or implemented by December 1st. And so it'll be interesting to see because I don't know how we're going to be able to make that decision and meet all of our goal one requirements. So, all right. Let's not focus on the Debbie Downer stuff. Mwah, mwah. Let's try and focus on some positive stuff here. All right. Here's where I want us to end today, and we're going to end early. I want to talk about industries or areas that we should focus on in working to diversify our economy. We have said we should diversify our economy since 1981. We've said it multiple times. There have been some movements, but we always come back to the things that we're comfortable with. The big three: fishing, forestry, and fun. And you catch the alliteration there. That's why I'm pretty proud of myself to finally put that together. But I think there's some growth areas that we need to be focusing on in trying to invest our capital, our energy, our human capital as well. Let's talk about target industries analysis. And again, don't worry about all this wording. Let me just say, I want to focus on growth sectors, mature sectors, and emerging sectors. Growth sectors are areas that have a strong concentration in our area already and have had positive employment growth over the last 10 years. Mature sectors are strong local concentrations. Those are things that are already here, but maybe have not grown or have had negative employment growth. But they're here, and there's a bunch of them already here. And emerging sectors are smaller concentrations, things that aren't necessarily a lot of what we have, but have had some positive employment growth. I don't want us to focus on the decline. I want to focus on the things where we can actually see improvements. This analysis was done for us by Johnson and McKenzie, the consultants we used early on. And it's not a great chart, but I've adapted it. Let's call them growth clusters, growth sectors. Here are the 6 that they identify that are strongly concentrated in our area and have had positive employment growth. And I'm highlighting construction, healthcare, and social assistance. Those are things that I think we can really focus on because the construction gets us hopefully movement in the housing area. Healthcare is certainly a growth opportunity as well. That's not to mean we shouldn't have arts, entertainment, and recreation, and accommodation and food service. Some of those happen independent, but these are 2 of the areas where I think we can focus on. I'm going to go back to it: living wage jobs. All right, next one, mature sectors. Mature sectors are ones that are here and have had maybe minimal growth or declining growth. But food manufacturing is one where I think we've got some opportunities. And this will come back to you in the end when we talk about the blue economy. And emerging sectors: information, finance, insurance, professional, scientific, and technical services. These are things that the economists believe we have an opportunity to grow into. Now, what are we doing? We're trying to diversify. Why do we diversify? Because we want to mitigate risk. We want to reduce the cyclical nature of our job cycles. In business, we do it to reduce risk and you increase profits. In our case, in the case of a community, diversification means you don't have the wild ups and downs in your economy. So increasing profits, in my mind, means stabilizing the ups and downs. I think that we have an opportunity in 3 areas, and there may be more, but I'm just throwing out 3 areas to start with. The blue economy, or what I'm calling the marine economy, that includes fisheries, food processing, natural resources, research, innovation, tourism, and commodity movement. I will say too, yesterday when I spoke to the group at Seaside, I had someone come up to me at the end of the meeting and say, I was invited to the TAC meetings and all they did was talk about Astoria. All they did was talk about Astoria. Now, we didn't probably just talk about Astoria, but everything that we focused on seem to be Astoria centered. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I think this blue economy sector, if we include tourism, which by definition it is, it helps to bring in the other part of our economy that sometimes we don't talk a lot about. Health and wellness. We have two hospital systems. We have health services. We have expansion going on. We have living and care facilities in our community, wellness businesses, healthy food systems, and behavioral health services. These are areas where we can see growth, and we can see where these types of services will be beneficial to our community. And the third one I've identified is construction, finding ways to expedite housing construction. We've said that since 1981. How do we make it easier to build housing in the county? The rules and regulations are never going to get easier, but how can we make it so that it becomes easier? One of the things that Kevin, you and I and Alyssa talked about was or maybe it was David, you and I, we talked about the idea of having permit specialists that help developers, whether they be for housing or they be for economic development jobs, having someone be available to provide guidance and direction. I think someone
That was
used the
part with
word,
our
yeah,
stuff.
that the guidance, the word was Sherpa. We need a Sherpa for
Yep.
these types of things. So that's a possibility there. Um, Trades education programs. This gets to Kevin's comments about the community college and the services and certificates and programs that they offer. Highlighting apprenticeships. This is also where we can see timber research and development. There has been a huge push in this mass timber movement, and it's had some mixed results. And that doesn't mean we abandon it, but there's no reason why we can't have new processes and new products being made and constructed in our area. We have spoken to a local entrepreneur who wants to process wood for craft and hobby enthusiasts. So specific types of wood processing that are then used in smaller products, smaller processes, and or crafts. And so something like that may be something we can help focus on as well. Sarah Lou, you wanted to say something.
I wanted to nitpick two words on this slide.
No. Go ahead.
Jobs where we're like, how do you define that? And so, on the research and innovation side, I spent like 6 months banging my head against a wall trying to convince people that what they do in their day-to-day business is innovative. I might recommend for your marine research and entrepreneurship projects
Yeah.
that is going to have you less pigeonholed. Then in the health and wellness sector sounds very woo-woo, very singing bowls yoga. I would say healthcare and wellness to
Okay.
ensure that people don't put a wall up when you say that. And so, I'll leave it to you to decide if you want to do that, but that is my 2 cents.
I appreciate that. In the back of my mind, I thought, yeah, there would be some gongs ringing and some yoga being done, but yeah, I think the clarity is always a good thing.
And I pay for sound baths. I think the wellness sector is important, but
Yeah,
healthcare, I think, speaks to CMH in Providence. So
yep, yep. All right, all right. Point well taken. Point well taken. All right. Advocacy. This is something else that I think the county has a role in. The county doesn't create jobs. I've said that numerous times. Government doesn't directly create a lot of jobs. We create jobs in government, but we are not responsible for the vast majority of the jobs that are created within the county. However, and I used this term yesterday, we set the table. We set the table in hopes that a group of entrepreneurs will come in and create economic activity. So what can we do? Well, again, we're not going to do the job creation necessarily, but we can advocate for the right place setting. We can advocate for the right types of things to happen at the table. We can offer a certain type of buffet to keep the analogy going. We need to be advocating for external investment in the local economy. We need to be a unified voice throughout the county advocating for projects that benefit the entire county. The housing projects in Seaside and Warrenton are going to benefit the whole county. They don't benefit just one city. A new job creation in Seaside or Cannon Beach will benefit the entire county. So we need to be a unified advocate. Streamline the process. I have heard that so many times. I will tell you that the state rules do not make it any easier for us to streamline the process. But the better we are at our jobs at the municipalities and at the county, the better we can help advise people through this process. And having someone to help people develop either jobs or housing, I think has some potential there. Gail, do you have any thoughts on this streamlined development process as the county community development director?
Streamlining the process is always a good thing. And yes, we have heard it. No matter how much we streamline, it's never enough. So until we completely abolish permitting requirements,
Yeah.
there will never be enough streamlining.
Point well taken. Point well taken.
Well, I also add, again, the city of Astoria, being very involved, as many of us are with the city of Astoria, just the permitting. And now Matt Brandmeier's leaving. So here we go again. So yeah, there is issues we hear from the business community, how difficult it is, and not just Astoria, also Seaside, also Warrenton. So we've got, and Melanie, I know it's a broken record time here talking about what we bring to the table to assist here.
And
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, David. Sorry.
I was just going to say that the Sherpa idea is got to be as much about education as it is about actually being able to affect some change, right? So when somebody gets stuck in the process, even though they're following all the steps, that person should have some power, some authority, some tools to break the logjam.
Similar to, or I think responding to maybe, anyhow, adding color to the streamlining. I think when it's written down, okay, that process makes sense. When I hear from business owners, it's not that the process is not streamlined, it's that they get inconsistent answers between people and over time. And that's not even, I don't even want to say that that's a county thing or a city thing across the entire district that I work in. And so to me, when you talk about workforce development, we've talked about a lot of business-facing workforce development. I also think we need to be developing our wastewater systems managers, our planners, and people that are even existing in these roles so that they are well educated and their answers are consistent across time and across people.
Point well taken. Go ahead.
I was just going to chime in with Sarah Lou in regards to the wastewater treatment training, because that's really an educational component that I think that all of our wastewater treatment providers are facing as far as challenges.
Yeah, and I'll add on, Sarah Lou, I think it's broader than just urban planners in terms of, there's a whole set of professionals that are involved in the development process, and the planners are not always the individuals who make decisions. So you have building officials, you have public works folks, and you have all the environmental side of things as well. It's kind of a whole host of individuals who are in that process who would be involved in the streamlining.
Yep.
I have to give a shout out to Gail as the grand old lady of planning in Clatsop County. She's been here longer than any of the planners, so congratulations to you, Gail. How long has it been? 5 years, 6 years? So the amount of turnover that has happened, and I'm guilty of it too, has made it difficult for communities to provide consistent process, interpretation, etc. And so I certainly respect that, and we can certainly do our best to reduce that. Part of that is just for us to continue to get better at our jobs. So,
I would say grand young lady,
Okay.
uh, just to clarify. And I think it's because she has, an awesome employer and everybody just wants to come here.
That's true. That's what I hear. That's what I hear. So anyway, but that is an example of the turnover that's happened in a lot of different areas, and it becomes much more difficult for the government to be consistent. We try our best. So, all right. Let's see. Here's one of the ones that I want to throw out, is a constant development of a leadership pool. As we age as a county, our leadership ages. And we need to make sure that the next generation of leadership is getting opportunity to step in when ideas happen. And so that's one that I've seen in other communities, and I throw it out there to see if there's any thoughts on that. Um, the elected officials in our county have been around for quite a while. That doesn't mean they're all old, but who's doing or what are we doing to train up the next group of leaders to help lead these cities and the county moving forward? Um, Advocacy for education and research opportunities. Obviously, Kevin, your point on the community college needing to be a central focal point there is important. But I want to find ways that we can expand OSU's footprint here as well, so that we have the ability to connect the high schools to the community college to OSU, and you can do more programs here that you don't have to go elsewhere. So that's one of my ideas. So, any other thoughts on that one?
Well,
Kevin, what happened? Because it used to be OSU, Western Oregon, and Linfield used to all be kind of partners. Is that not the case anymore? I thought it still was.
That's correct, and it also deals with the different high schools, Monica, who they're associated with and targeted with. And as you well know, and with how the college has kind of had a breakdown with the high schools and K-12, I know that is like front and center, and build in. And Jay, we talked about like
Mhm.
with you. I mean, I'm on leadership committees on the extension side of the house, and thinking about like our hospitality industries and what they do at OSU with thinking about South County again, about Seaside, Cannon Beach, etc. And then Linfield, and then working with them on different programs like Napa High School has a certain relationship. I just think that we need to kind of get that organized, streamlined. And I also want to mention, of course, our Class of Works program that we have. We have 29 interns this summer, and multiply that up by the 6 years we've had the program, and how many of those students continue on in college to universities or at CLATSIP, or they're hired by the employer. So I think that's one of our kind of like unique value propositions we have in Clatsop County. Other counties don't have. But you're right, Monica. I think it's really getting back at the table with the universities, with the colleges, our nursing program. I know there's a big meeting coming up here this month, for example, with OHSU and our college. So more to come on that.
All right, Sarah Lou, you have comment.
That's exciting, Kevin. I wanted to go to local did it the one,
Leadership.
yeah.
Yes.
I would take age out of it. I think that
Okay.
that's like pragmatic, and we kind of understand that. But for me, it's just really about capacity. As somebody who runs a lot of committees and has run hundreds of volunteers, there aren't enough people of any age engaging in just leadership and even participatory level. So I would just kind of broaden the scope of that.
Point well taken. Point well taken. All right. Investments. Now, given financial constraints that we are anticipating, investment can be human capital, it can be capital. Job training programs, absolutely important because need to be training for the future. That's not meant, Kevin, to be a criticism. That's just an idea that I think we need to continue to invest in these areas. Economic development coordination. I've heard from several people that a unified voice out of Clatsop County is more effective than multiple uh, or disunified. I don't think that's the right word, but independent. So, business development funding, continue to focus on finding all of the tools that we can through programs like the SBDC, et cetera, to help with business expansion. All level housing development, not trying to limit it to a particular location or particular type, but all level housing development. Leading local and economic development planning, we should be helping to coordinate the work because, as I mentioned, what benefits one benefits us all. We're that small where it matters. It doesn't matter where it is, as long as it's positive, it's going to help all. What is it? Rising tides lift all boats. So that's where I'm going with that. And investment in participation. And this gets a little bit to Sarah Lou's comment. The people who are involved are the ones who generally get things done, generally. And those are the ones that everyone goes to sit on this committee or participate in that particular idea or issue. We have to broaden that base of people. Now, is this a standard EOA comment? No, but it's part of what we need to be doing to make our economic program move forward. Melanie, you have a comment.
I really think you need to include infrastructure in there somewhere.
All right. Yes.
Both for housing, business
Yeah.
development, planning. It really, we can't do any of this without water, sewer, roads,
Yep.
etc.
Absolutely. Yes. Hard to believe a planner forgot to mention that, but I did. So thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Just the last couple of minutes here. I want to wrap up. Go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
And other I've had with you and with Dawn and others about Cedar's role. I mean, Cedar exists to be the unified voice, whatever, but how do we take these opportunities as we always work so collaboratively? And how do we take these opportunities and put some more teeth into the funding side or whatever we have to work together to grow these strategies?
I think Cedar's certainly an important part of this. It's the central place where we need to make sure that we have all the resources necessary to do what we need to do there. So, just one last little item I want to throw out there for conceptual is this concept I've been focusing on the side here is this blue marine sector opportunities. Oregon State University did a wonderful study and published it last November about the blue economy in Oregon. And what they identified is that Oregon is decades behind Washington and California in terms of effort in and investment in jobs associated with water, the ocean, rivers, and all of the types of businesses that are associated with those areas. Oregon State identified living resources, fisheries, wildlife, habitat, marine construction, shipbuilding and repair, marine transportation, marine research and education, tourism and recreation, technology, coastal restoration, community resilience, manufacturing, supportive industries, and government investment. That is where OSU believes the blue sector can grow in Oregon. The statistics in the study are actually unfortunate. We are way behind Oregon, California, and Washington in terms of the GDP that's produced by water-based or water-oriented businesses. And I'm lifting this up because we've got some major advantages. Location, 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 baby. We have the biggest river and the biggest ocean in the Northwest here. Why are we not the center of this discussion? We have historical fisheries and water-based businesses. We have educational partners, and I call it from CTE to PhD. We've got all of those people and organizations here already. We have an active port and waterfront business sector. That means not only on the river, but it also means the stuff that's happening down the ocean. We have new industrial investment. We've got the Hayek Marine stuff. And I was out on the tugboat over the last weekend. That's huge from the river. It's huge, and the potential impact I think is just great. And we have a very successful tourism sector. We have so many groups, organizations, and businesses that are already doing it, but we're not coordinated. We're not organized. We're not trying to promote it in the sense of this is one of the areas we want to focus on. This is one of the things that I'm going to kind of lift up, but I'm going to be working on the side towards implementation. Sarah Lou, what do you have?
Well, I know that we have talked about this, but I
Yeah,
felt obligated to say it to the group. Colpack is wrapping up
yeah.
a blue economy, both a data model that we're going to be proposing to the state, because one of the things that Oregon is not doing is looking at this intersectional sector as a whole and tracking it. And then we're also producing strategies for the region, which are largely due to where these jobs are going to be about Clatsop County.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that I've heard that quite frankly I've been surprised by, because I think in my 8 or 9 years that this might be a shift, but a lot of the businesses are ready to get together to form a coalition.
Hmm.
Um, I think just due to the tsunami of issues that they're facing, despite
Hmm.
all of the goodness that they bring. Um, and one county commissioner has actually approached me about building some working groups around certain aspects of the blue economy, really geographic locations. But so we'll continue to work closely with the county on this, and I think it's really important and will lead to good outcomes.
And I would just like to add that, and we kind of touched on it a little bit ago when we talked about streamlining and stuff, but, there are investments being made, like you mentioned with Hayak, and then
Hmm.
the port is trying to make some investments. But there are still so many governmental barriers because as of last month, Hayak still didn't have a dredging permit. And so it doesn't matter how much you invest if you can't actually do the work because you're still waiting on permitting. So,
Yep, absolutely. And there are lots of examples where the government has gotten in the way of itself. And I'm a government employee, so just different levels having different rules. Kevin, go ahead.
Well, I also want to say along Monica, think about the Port of Astoria, about Pier 2 and about the in-water dredging. So all of those constraints and issues and challenges. I also want to mention, Jay, before we leave today, Melanie had mentioned before about food and beverage
Hmm.
clusters. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge that because that's been a fast growing industry. You think about what Fort George has done, for example, for the entire city of Astoria and Bowie, but you have Sisu Brewing
Hmm.
and Seaside and
Hmm.
Pelican and the distilleries. So I think that's really important to mention. I know that you kind of categorize the three clusters, but I think that food and beverage. I also know with our SBDC,
Yep.
with the $258,000 in funding that we've secured, that we're working with the North Coast Food Web to do like a food innovation portion. And about you said about using with OSU. I think it's great opportunities. Like they do in Portland with PCC, kind of recipe to market kind of a thing. So that's one of our strategies to work on the SBDC that hopefully can develop beyond the obvious ones we already know about.
Hmm.
But people have businesses that they kind of do an incubator and then they decide to expand and grow in the campus. I think food and beverage is still very, very important to acknowledge.
Absolutely, it is, and I've talked with the OSU people about this, and one of the things we identified as a hurdle in that is the wastewater treatment system, the infrastructure that's necessary to have these types of businesses expand. No matter what you're making, if you're processing fish or processing beer or processing corn, it always wreaks havoc on the local wastewater treatment system. So there's that other side of it that we need to be aware of. But Kevin, that's a good point. Gail,
Thanks
go
for
ahead.
bringing that up, Kevin.
Yeah,
I mean, it's more than just beer and fish. It's coffee and
yeah,
clam chowder and soda and sauces and those
yep,
other small small businesses that are growing and scaling in Clatsop County that can do that and don't necessarily have to have, I mean, if they're micro, they don't necessarily have to have, public wastewater infrastructure.
hmm,
But certainly once they once they scale up and grow larger, then yes, probably need to relocate them somewhere else. But those are important, and it's a target industry for the state. And it seems like the food processing just got kind of lumped into maritime, and I think it's not just maritime, and I'm not sure where to put it there, Jay.
We can pull that out. I know that is one of the sectors I had identified earlier, and I can pull that out as a separate one as well. There's no problem with that. Gail, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to something that Monica just talked about with Hayek Marine. And first of all, I want to clarify they're not hung up in permitting with the county. So I just want to be very clear about that. But
Oh, I didn't mean that.
no, I know, but I just wanted to be clear. But it's actually a bigger discussion, and Jay and I have talked about this with regard to housing and some other things where, at a local level, we are being encouraged by the state to make sure that we're communicating within our departments, but with the jurisdictions around us. But yet, as we go higher up in the levels of government, we're finding that there's often more siloing going on, and they're not talking to each other. And so we have, situations where we do get conflicting information, conflicting requirements, and that, I think, as we talk about streamlining, is another important area that we need to focus on.
I think to echo that, we were involved in a meeting with a state agency, and we asked about FEMA BIOP, and the response we got was, "Well, you should go ask FEMA about that." And so it was kind of like, well, what you're asking us to do and this conflict with each other, and so there's some communication and streamlining that needs to happen at multiple levels. So I didn't want that to be a criticism of any one agency, but the fact that the agencies weren't communicating to each other just made it really difficult, made it more difficult for us. So, all right. Excellent comments. I appreciate your time. And I'm just going to let you know that we have another meeting set up for September 19th. This will be an online meeting. Then I'm trying to schedule a public open house where we present in a more relaxed atmosphere, some of the findings, goals, policies, and action steps. And I'm hopeful to do one or two of them before we go to formal public hearings, so that we give another group of people an opportunity to add to the discussion. So that's kind of where we're at. Is we're going to meet in September. I'm going to try to put together for you action statements, timeframes, and our partner groups that are going to work with us on this. And then after that meeting, then we'll go to a much broader public, hopefully, review process. So any questions or comments?
I can't find my hand raised.
There we go.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Okay. I just wanted to say, if you guys are out there, and about the job training programs that meet the needs of the current and future employers, if you know of employers that need some training or need to skill up their people, just let the employment department know, because we do have on the job training funds through our partner services, and we can also help send them back to school and pay for individual training programs, as long as it's just short-term training. Also, I'd like to, I'm going to be a real Debbie Downer now, and I'd like to take the time to thank Sarah Lou for correcting me on my I'm having such a hard time with my ears and stuff, and I couldn't hear for the personal care, my misinformation on that, my personal care sector. So I just want to thank you for correcting me on that. And next time, hopefully I'll have good connection. We're in a new place. For those of you that don't know, WorkSource Oregon is now in the Seaside Outlet Mall. We're right next to Eddie Bauer, and we're here from 8:30 to 5. And we have computers and computer labs and employer rooms. So if there is a new employer that needs to do any interviewing and stuff, and they don't have the space, we have that space, and it's all free for them because it comes out of their employment taxes. So
I'd like to come over and take a tour of that soon.
Monica, go ahead.
Well, it was just a question for Debbie, and it's more of a joke, but I was just curious if they're planning to rename the Seaside Outlet Mall since it's not really a mall anymore, but
Oh,
more of like.
it's a legend, right, Debbie? You're next to the Legends Public House too.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something, Jay. Just a
Go
question.
ahead.
Can you on this meeting on the 19th? Can you send out an Outlook invite so
Yeah.
there's safe calendars?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. I've got that note. Will do. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to say thank you for your time. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.